I'm James Justt, and this is Libertarian Counterpoint. With me today is our final conversation with Kalish Morrow, who's running for City Council of Hanford, and Nickolas Wildstar, who's running for Mayor of California. Mayor Wildstar, we'll just call you that now.
There you go.
Sounds good.
Well, I'm lucky I didn't call you Governor Wildstar, because that's how I used to refer to you for the longest time. Kalish, why don't we sit here and have a short conversation about what it's like to make the decision to run for office? I know there's lots of libertarians, sit there and consider running for office, but what's it's like to have a short conversation? What's it like to kind of go through that process?
I don't know. It's like just jumping off the deep end going, okay, I guess I'm going to do this. Yeah, for me, when I first ran in 2016, it really just came about where we had the incumbent at the time. He was deciding not to run again. I was in his district, and he was out there looking for other people that were going to run. And, I'd been so much involved with the community and already, kind of being vocal with our city council. I said, sure, why not? Well, once he announced that he made it public that he wasn't going to run again, 3 more people jumped in. So anyway, after I lost that one, I knew that if I ran again, I was going to run a much different campaign, be a lot more aggressive, start early, get my name out there a lot more. In the meantime, I had already been building up some of the name recognition through activism and whatnot and community involvement. Just have a campaign manager, have funding, all the things. So we could run a serious campaign.
So that first campaign, it helped you learn a lot. So when you're much better prepared for that second one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I got to know what all my mistakes were. Maybe not start canvassing after all of the mail-in ballots goes out. Start doing that beforehand. I was in a weird situation though, because my husband's military and he was out of town a lot, getting ready for deployment and things like that. So there really just wasn't a lot of time. I was running a business, 2 small children. I'm walking down the sidewalk with my kids in a double stroller. They're still really young at that time, so I can go canvass.
Yes,
I just doing what you can.
There's this whole new generation of libertarian women who just astound me, because I had to wait till my kids were grown before I could get involved, because it was too cumbersome. And so all these young women who are out there, there's a handful of them, and they're just so impressive. To me, it's just so impressive. I'm sitting here watching you guys go out and do all this while raising your young children and raising your young families, and I couldn't do it. It's something I was not able to do. My kids were raised, and when I decided a couple of years ago, I was part of the Ted Brown Brigade. I don't know, you guys know about the Ted Brown Brigade, is when actually all the candidates have kind of decided, and you've got the unopposed. Right. People with unopposed, Ted Brown calls you up and says, hey, we've got this opportunity. You guys want to run for office? All right, I'll think about it. So I go and I talk to my family. What do you guys think? And, what do you guys think? While it's not likely, there's a possibility that, media can blow up. You just want to go through all the things and make sure all the family is known. And so, whatever. And you go through all that kind of family stuff. For me, that's what was my focus on. My focus was on, is the whole family going to be ready for me running for office?
Yeah. Well, and and kind of touching on what you asked before about, libertarians wanting to start running. We just had a meeting, kind of like a subgroup of the candidate support committee that we have, where we're we're going to be launching Operation First Step. So basically reaching out, we're researching the different counties and seeing what is available city council and below that. So we're looking at, water boards and school boards and the ones that the
fire district boards, all
those different ones. There's so many different ones which I never even thought of really beforehand. But there's so many that are out there, and these are obtainable spots. And a lot of times too, these boards are sitting empty. So if we have anybody that's out there that that's really interested in wanting to run a campaign or something, and really wants to make a difference both in their community and for the Libertarian Party, they need to look into these other opportunities. Start thinking outside the box, and start building up that resume.
Well, that's a campaign committee. I'll let you guys get what those of us would need. A nice little checklist. A 10-point checklist. So if you're running for office, here's what you do. Here's your 10 first things that you do. You go to this the county clerk and whatever it is. If that kind of thing would be nice, because having to reinvent that essentially every time is kind of a pain.
Yeah, and I think that now, the state party has been looking so different from what it used to here in California. We've gotten a lot more organized. We've got a lot more funding coming in, being a lot more serious about these sorts of things. And like our candidate support committee is a great resource for that, as well as Open Source Liberty. I believe they're helping. They've helped me out with my campaign. They're helping out Wildstar as well too.
Yeah.
So they're great resources for anybody.
Yeah, no, I'm a part of Open Source Liberty myself.
Right,
I do some help, and they're going to offer me some help if I get past my whole signature thing. So Nickolas, why don't we talk to you? Someone who's run multiple times. What might you want to say to somebody who's sitting at home, listening to us talk and say, I might want to get involved, but the toxic atmosphere is so toxic. How do you go get involved with that without becoming part of that?
Well, that's actually why you're needed, so you can, clean up the swamp, drain the swamp, as Trump said. But yeah, I mean, we need good people in office, and that's what's sad about our leadership is we're expecting them to be those good people that they are promoting themselves to be on the campaign trail. I was one of those people to where I saw it on TV and this political circus, and of course, once they get in office, become disheartened by their performance. So let that frustration add to your motivation to run for office. Yeah, there may not be any structure there, especially if you're running as a libertarian, unfortunately, with the Republican and Democratic Party, they're well-oiled machines. So all you got to do is just raise your hand, and they'll immediately groom you to be this candidate that they need you to be. However, again, with the Libertarian Party, because that structure isn't there, you kind of have to create it as you go, and I think that's kind of the best part about running as a libertarian is you kind of get a chance to do your own thing. I mean, the first time that I ran for governor was in 2014 as an independent. Now, a lot of people may say, that's a bit impractical for you to run for such an office for your first time running, but there was no candidate for libertarian on the ballot in 2014. So running as an advocate of the party that you like or want to represent helps with presence. And the Libertarian Party, unfortunately, doesn't recognize that much. If they did, they would probably put more resources into those candidates, such as myself, that do aim for executive positions, because it does give us an opportunity to be heard. So where I ran as an independent in 2014 and got 12 votes, imagine if I had ran as a libertarian. The Peace and Freedom Party and the Green Party had their candidates, and there were some independents there as well. Like I said, myself as a write-in candidate got 12 votes. Then when I ran as a libertarian in 2018, I got nearly 12,000 votes. You see, so had I ran in 2014 as a libertarian, probably would have got that 12,000 then, and then in 2018 got even more. You see, so it's all about running for the race that you believe that you can do. You got to know your strengths and know the limitations of them.
Yeah, I think for up-ticket candidates, it's a great opportunity to be that spokesperson for the party. You have so many more opportunities to get your voice heard out there, and
Absolutely.
That's definitely a tool for us.
Well, I'm a firm believer in that we actually need to do all of it. We need to get to the blow-up boards, the small boards that kind of nobody knows. We need the voices of the people who can go up there and argue for the big positions that are not likely to win, but are willing to go through the process and willing to take the arrows. We need all of that. And so if you're sitting at home and you're considering it, well, talk to your local libertarian official, find somebody to talk to, and work yourself through it. That's what I encourage you to do.
Yes.
Maybe you don't have to make the decision. Work yourself through it. Maybe take a couple years. You don't have to make the decision in a day or a month or a week. You can plan it for 2024.
Right.
This is not something that is so immediate a need. It's a long-term thing that we're trying to build. Right. We're all trying to build something for long-term. We want our future generations to benefit from our hard work. So actually, future generations from benefiting from hard work. Let's talk about education. You've got to homeschool your kids. If I kind of, that's a.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
I think that's a growing movement. Where the unschooling movement is kind of a growing movement. The
Yeah.
education system is becoming an indoctrination movement, I guess is one way a lot of people call it. It's, try to stay away from hyperbole, but it's almost hard to these days.
Right. Yeah, we made that decision really early on for our kids to do homeschooling. It first started out kind of as like a paranoia, you know, you start hearing more and more about school shootings and whatnot, and of course, you know, when you've got your children, you it's literally watching your heart walk around outside your body. It's scary. But then beyond that, just knowing that, you know, California's got some of the worst education, education in California is some of the worst in the nation. And then where we live too, I think it's one of the worst in the nation just in our town. So just knowing that there weren't very many good opportunities for our kids. So anyway, we put them in preschool earlier on just so they can get kind of that interaction, a little bit of structure, and I think that was good for them. And then from kindergarten on, we've homeschooled them. And now, you know, like you're talking about unschooling, it was a really new concept for me about a year or so ago, and we've kind of been slowly transitioning to that because it's really hard to just like let go of that. We had our kids with they were doing like a homeschool program, but it was so full of like all these worksheets, and like they just were hating it, and I could see where in certain areas they were killing some of the creativity too. And we just threw our hands up and said, you know what, no, we've got to do something different. And then kind of like unschooling says that you have to kind of go through this deschooling process. You just let the kids do whatever they want for a few months, like, and everybody just decompresses for a while. And so we kind of unintentionally did that. We didn't know what we were going to do, what our structure was going to be, our curriculum, what have you. And you know, then they just started learning things on their own. You know, we finally got them like just like little Kindle Fires or whatever to play on. We put some learning apps and stuff on them, and they were really excited about learning and playing these games. And now my 6-year-old, who could barely, you know, do math on counting his fingers, is starting to figure out multiplication problems, and I'm just floored. And so it's just really made me a believer that yes, like children can teach themselves, you know, you still have to facilitate them, you know, and you still kind of encourage them too, like, hey, you guys aren't really doing anything, how about you go play that new game I got you and learn some letters. Okay, Mom, you know. Yeah, and they're really happy with that.
And how do we take some of these lessons that we've learned and put them into the low-income neighborhoods of Fresno or my stuff, because that's kind of where the next goal is, you know, we got parents who are too busy, you know, two parents are working or don't have the resources, or maybe they're just not capable. You know, not everybody's capable of doing that. Right. And so how do we get those people to get them in the better education, that type of more free education where children are more free to learn on their own? How do we do that in Fresno?
I think more so it has to do with the lack of funding. Especially in Fresno, that seems to get the butt end of it, you know. And of course, you have those city officials that mismanage funding and corrupt individuals, you know, taking the money, embezzling, etc. So I would say, if anything, because unfortunately my, you know, powers as mayor would be limited with regards to what I'd be able to do with the educational system. But because of that bully pulpit, I would have a larger stage to, you know, speak on behalf of what the people of the community want from their school board officials. And, you know, of course, with like what I said with the funding, because I am in charge of the budget, you know, I'd be able to make sure that those underdeveloped communities that feel like they're not getting enough, you know, funding in their neighborhoods actually get money to make their school system better. Investing into after-school programs that I would be able to do, you know, and school-to-work programs and job training programs, you know, to help that transition from, you know, going into a classroom into the workplace, you know. So I think that's equally as important as, you know, preparing our children for what's next, you know, to come.
Yeah, well, so much of our education money is now controlled from either Sacramento or Washington, D.C. Right. Even the local school boards essentially don't have much control. Right. And so when a city council member or a mayor, you know, you actually have to work outside the education system to figure out how to do this thing. And that's kind of, it's an extra challenge.
Well, you know, and because of the movement, there's becoming more and more co-ops and resource centers that are popping up. And I think that as somebody in a mayoral position, city council position, we can help facilitate those facilities from being created.
That's what I'll be doing.
Right,
Exactly.
looking at the different ordinances. What do you need, especially like in certain areas. We've got one side of our town that's low income and another side that's a lot more prosperous. If we can get one of these resource centers put a little bit either in the middle or more towards that side of town, giving them an opportunity where it's like different kind of education. You've got a crappy-ish school in your area. You've got
like
this
you
resource
said,
center.
You can prop up the tablets, and the people are pretty much learning for themselves.
They are,
know?
and yeah, it's been amazing seeing. I've been doing a lot more research on it, and we're seeing like these unschool resource centers or co-op or whatnot, and unfortunately, they can be a little expensive. They're still cheaper than your public school system, which I think we're paying $12,000 a year.
Like that,
You're spending $4,000 a year on your
Exactly.
kid at like one of these resource centers. However, this is coming directly out of your pocket on top of already being taxed for the public school system. But if you're able to do some fundraisers or have families sponsor another family too that can afford it, I think that there's some other options, but just being able to facilitate these other organizations from popping up would be a start.
All right, well, I'm going to throw you guys under the bus here for a minute. We've had nice, easy conversations today. So, okay, we're going to talk about the concept of my body, my choice.
All right.
With abortion
That'd be
restrictions,
fun.
kind of going restrictions, for me, it's the abortion restrictions that are sweeping the nation and the mandatory vaccinations are actually the same argument.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, the people in the
drug use.
people in the government have decided that they get to control what goes on inside your body. And it doesn't surprise me that after mandatory vaccinations, the very next step was now we're having abortion restrictions.
Right.
And so what's kind of your feelings on this?
Yeah, I think that we've definitely been on a slippery slope, and like you're pointing out too, like drug use as well. There's all these different things where they have been restricting what we can do with our own bodies. When it comes to abortion, I think that it's just not a very black and white. There's a lot of gray area. Each case can be very different. I don't agree with it being a means of birth control, but it's just such like. There's so many but then.
Yeah, it's such a multifaceted issue, and we don't actually have that discussion. We have it as a black and white discussion,
Right.
and rather than there's a vast difference between someone who is pregnant through, say, violence, and someone who is pregnant because they're out having fun all the time, and which I don't have a problem with, but you guys should take responsibility for that. But I also don't have the right to ask the question. Why is someone having an abortion? I don't have the right to ask because the question is, it might be I don't have the right to ask why. And so society doesn't have the right to ask why. So for me, it's my job to find other ways rather than the law to
Right.
reduce abortions. If I don't like abortions, it's on me to use different tactics. And the same way, if I like vaccinations, it's up for me to find some other way than to force people to come through and it's vaccination, because that actually scares me, because the government having control of your body, whether it's vaccinations or abortion, it's the government.
Well, that's the problem, is
Right.
we've given them too much authority to govern us. They've pretty much codified our actions and behaviors and told us what's acceptable and what isn't. And to me, all of these issues shouldn't even be up for discussion in the political arena.
Right.
I mean, as mayor, that's what I'm going to be refusing to do, is deal with these sort of petty issues, because your body is your property, and our government just needs to respect it. That's simply put. I mean, no matter what you're putting in your body. I mean, with my wife, when she was pregnant and going through birth, because she was refusing certain medications that the doctors were trying to give her to speed the birth along, it seemed to complicate things even further. And then they had to sign off permission slips and waivers and all of this bureaucracy just for us choosing to be the parents that we wanted to be. And we shouldn't have every facet of our lives being dictated so much by government, nor should we be expecting it.
I think that's the major problem. There's far
Right.
too many people expecting government to sit here and tell you what to do.
Right.
Tell us what to do.
How to be good people.
Yeah.
You know?
Like the government knows how to be a good person.
Exactly. They're still people themselves,
I mean, the history of government is not, shall we say, a Disney movie. You're right. It's a horror movie. If history of government, even our government, even the best governments is not pleasant, right?
No.
If you go through the history, it's a history of abuse and corruption and forcing people to behave in ways they don't want to be. And so it's just a very bizarre time of we're living in, where people who go to vaccinations, like, I'm not anti-vaccinations, but yet people call me anti-vax because I don't support mandatory
So, well,
vaccinations.
If you question it, you
Yes.
then become anti-vax. Because
Yeah,
I'm not anti-vax either. I'm pro safe vaccinations. But even because I question the norm, I would get lumped into the anti-vax
Yeah.
And
category.
I'm just simply pro-choice. I feel
Right?
like as a parent, you should choose to vaccinate
But
your
you're
children.
anti-vax now.
Yeah, but
Now you're
because of that,
anti-vax.
I'm anti-vax. You know, if I want to say no, I shouldn't be able to say no. I shouldn't be forced by the government to comply.
I'm
Right.
a believer in one at a time. You go and you get, personally, you give the vaccinations one at a time.
Yeah.
Because that's the way they're tested. And so if that's the way they're tested, that's the way they should be given. And I'm perfectly fine with that. And in one of my libertarian positions, I'm actually willing to have the state subsidize vaccinations for anybody who wants one. Right? So I'm actually nowhere near anti-vaccinations, but there's no way you would ever get me to agree that you have to force someone
Right.
to inject a foreign substance.
Especially if it's my choice. I'm forcing my choice on you.
Right.
There's got to be something fundamentally wrong with that.
And so in that, there's that whole argument of, but if you infect other people, I mean, besides the fact, well, I have to be infected first before I can actually infect you. But, if you infect other people, though, then you're at fault. And it's like, but there's risks that are involved with vaccinations. If
Absolutely.
you're cold, you can't set me on fire to keep you warm.
Right.
But there's also no natural right to not get sick.
Right. And
Yeah, I have a natural right to not get hit by a drunk driver, but I don't have a natural right to not
You're
get,
right.
to not get a cold.
Right. Well, and so for me, I was just that blind sheeple, just, okay, well, CDC says we do this, and all these things say it's great and we should do it. It wasn't until the mandates started coming up that, the warning bells started going off. I started doing more research on it and realized how imperfect of a system we are.
Right.
We've got the one size fits all. And then it made me think about my own childhood illnesses. I had 2 autoimmune diseases when growing up. Juvenile rheumatoid arthritis and dermatomyositis. I got it shortly after I had my childhood vaccinations. But they're sitting there going, we don't know what this is. We don't know where this comes from. Well, as an adult, as I'm looking into these things, I'm like, well, it messes with your immune system. It seems natural that it would be the cause of my autoimmune issues. And then it eventually turned into Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I dealt with childhood cancer. So, so here we are, we're worrying about measles and rubella and whatnot, and these things are bad, but we've traded that in and now have chronic illness and
I just
cancer.
read a story about how Crystal Geyser pled guilty to poisoning water with arsenic. I mean, come on. So, yeah, the long-term effects, we definitely got to consider those.
Yeah, we've gone a long way in our society where we now have a right to not have, a sort of right to not get sick from a natural issue, rather than you don't have a right to, rather than it's, I've lost my train of thought. I hate when this happens. We've lost the right to control our own bodies. We've surrendered that to the government, and that seems like a very bad idea long term. So we've got the Libertarian Party State Convention is in a couple weeks. I hope you guys are both coming. I hope
Absolutely.
I get there. So you might be the best answer. What do libertarians have to look forward to coming in 2020?
Oh, I mean, we've got the thing I'm looking most forward to is the presidential debates. It should be pretty interesting, especially now that we got Vermin Supreme throwing in the boot. There's some, and then for those who like the debates and stuff, we've got quite a few bylaws changes that are being presented, so that's going to rile some people up, I'm sure. And then, of course, last year we went and deleted the whole platform.
Yeah, I'm on the platform committee this year, so it's going.
Right. Yeah.
At this stage, all I can tell you is it's going.
Yeah. So I've been hearing some stuff about that from Jill Olson, and
it's going.
Oh, and then I'll be on a panel too.
Well, what I'd like to hear is we announced the nominees for the Carl J. Bray Award, and congratulations, you were nominated.
Ah,
and our local here, Emily Tilford, was nominated by me. But I tried to look up a list so I could read the rest of the nominations here, and I couldn't find one. I know it was Judge Gray, Boomer
John
Shannon.
Prosser. Yeah, Boomer Shannon.
John Prosser. Mm-hmm. I think there was a couple more people, and
I
I greatly
about 10.
apologize. I looked before I came on here so I could write them down.
Mark Hinkle was another one. Oh, I should have started counting off how we've got.
I figured I'd be able to pull it off the website easily later, so I didn't write them down when I filled out the ballot, and I went to go back look and I couldn't find them. So I apologize to all of you. Every single one of you is deserving. So you being here today, I want to thank you for all of them, for all of us, for all your service that you and everybody who has been nominated for that
Thank
award
you.
has done. It's greatly appreciated by me, and I'm sure by most of our libertarian viewers. So we've got a couple minutes left. Nickolas, you have a minute to give a closing statement about your campaign.
Absolutely. Well, what I want to let people know is what we're attempting to do here as libertarians is simply get back to the fundamentals of what our country is supposed to be, a republic, not a democracy, not a dictatorship, not an imperialistic country. And that's what I would like to do as the next mayor of Fresno, is just give the nation an opportunity to see libertarianism in effect in an executive position. Since Fresno is the 5th largest city in California, given the opportunity to turn the city gold, I think more people in the state, as well as probably even the country, would be inspired to vote libertarian. So please definitely visit my website, wildstar2020.com. If you want to find out more about my activism, please visit my other website, governorwildstar.com.
Great, thank you, Nickolas. And Kalish, would you like to take a minute to tell the viewers, kind of give them a rehash about your campaign?
Okay, yeah, I definitely, one of the top priorities is deregulation, making us a more business-friendly environment that's going to help make the community thrive. Just beyond that, I want to be able to bring a new creative solutions is really what I bring to the table. I don't like being told, no, we can't do that, because I don't think that we have to stay inside that box. And so I'm looking forward to stepping in there and bringing forth some different ideas.
Great. I want to thank you guys for being here. This was a great conversation. We got to break our normal format, and I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys coming. Your website is Wildstar 2020, and you can be found on Facebook, Kalish Morrow for Hanford City Council, I believe it was.
Yep.
All right. So thank you guys for coming. For information on our topics and our candidates, you can go to our website. I'll put that up on the website, LibertarianCounterpoint.com. If you're catching us on YouTube, please hit all of the buttons. We greatly appreciate it. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter these days. And from all of us here at Libertarian Counterpoint, we want to thank you for watching, and please remember to love everybody.